Hello and welcome. My name's Chris Longman. I'm an educational developer with Lancaster University, and I am the Programme Director for the Postgraduate Certificate in Academic Practice, which is otherwise known as ICAP, International Certificate in Academic Practice. This ICAP programme is a staff development programme that we run across Lancaster's international partners, our partners in China, Malaysia, and here in Ghana. We also run a very similar programme in Lancaster. And so the idea of this is that we have shared expectations about teaching and learning, but also, crucially, we help our teaching staff interrogate the ideas of learning and teaching, and especially their professional practice. And the idea of this is to help staff with their teaching practice, but also help them to understand the learning experience of their students. And what we often see is a transformation, and I hope that the teachers here would agree who have done the ICAP programme, a transformation from more of a teacher-centric vision of what teaching and learning is, to one that actually looks at the student experience as much as what is actually being done in terms of management of classes. Now that is quite a demanding thing. We're asking people to spend a lot of time and effort doing this master's level programme, but also it's demanding in terms of people questioning their own professional identity sometimes. And so it's not an easy thing to do, and so we're very, very pleased when our staff engage with this with enthusiasm, and incredibly pleased when obviously we have a graduation event like this and people are actually saying you have passed the programme. It is not an easy thing to do, so well done to you. So I'm very pleased to be here in Accra this week. I'm doing ICAP programmes with other cohorts, not the cohort that are graduating today because they have finished. They're very happy, I'm sure, about that. And it's, not only that the ICAP workshops I'm doing this week, but also we're having this event today. So there's going to be the graduation of our first graduating cohort from LU Ghana, but also a sharing practice event. But before we start, I'm going to ask Collins to put on a short video. This is a video of Simon Allen, my colleague. Now, many of you will know Simon because he was here from the very beginning, really, helping to, when LU Ghana was set up, he was here to set up the ICAP programme. And he taught many of you, especially those in the first cohort, first and second cohorts here. So, unfortunately, he can't be here to actually be with us in the flesh today. However, he has made a short video. The reason he can't be here is because he has recently been promoted and he is now the head of educational development at Lancaster University. So he has lots of pressing responsibilities, but he's very sad not to be here. But Collins, if you could bring up the video, we can actually have a look at him and listen to him.
Well, hello and very good morning, everybody. For colleagues who don't know me, I'm Simon Allen and I'm the Head of Educational Development at Lancaster. Unfortunately, I can't be with you personally in Accra today, but I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited to welcome you virtually instead to this, the inaugural Sharing Practice event at Lancaster University, Ghana, and of course the very first graduation of colleagues who successfully completed the Postgraduate Certificate in Academic Practice International Programme. I've been invited to make a short introduction, so that's what I'm going to do, and then I'll hand over to my esteemed colleagues. Today's event very much echoes the approaches that we take to supporting a wider educational enhancement at both Lancaster University and also other of Lancaster's transnational partnerships. And the approach has really been to raise the profile of the insights into teaching, into learning and curriculum for the wider interest of and benefit of others who are working with similar issues in similar contexts. And it's also, of course, a wonderful opportunity to come together to network to discuss those shared challenges and successes with one another, and to mutually celebrate our commitment to teaching excellence. These sharing practice events are a really important opportunity for everyone to gain from the scholarly insights that people have achieved through their professional learning, in many instances as a result of their reading and critical reflections during their study on the PGCAP programme. And of course, whilst we have our speakers today, this space is also there for everyone to share their own experiences and ideas in the ensuing discussions. I would like to make a note to congratulate all of the colleagues who are graduating today. It's a fantastic achievement. On a personal note, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to have had a chance to work with so many wonderfully committed educators in Ghana, and to have been a part of the establishment of the university in Accra. And moreover, I have to say, engaging with the PGCAP programme, those colleagues who have completed it, it's a significant undertaking. Everybody who's gone through the process has done so by completing 3 modules over 2 years, has drawn on insights from the research into teaching and learning in higher education, sought out feedback from their students, worked collaboratively and constructively to observe one another's teaching as well as to design modules. Everybody's completed assessed work that's had to capture their own individual critical reflections and insights about their teaching practice and their situation and context. Today, of course, we're delighted that colleagues from that first group of ICAP graduates are presenting and sharing some of those insights today. And it's particularly significant now that LU Ghana has really established itself as an institution with a reputation for really high quality teaching, where increasingly colleagues across the partnership, both in Lancaster and in Accra, can benefit hugely from gaining better insight into learning, teaching, assessment and curriculum within this very unique transnational education context. So, in a moment, I'm going to disappear from view again and I'll leave you to enjoy your day. But before I do, I just want to reiterate my congratulations once again to everybody who's graduating today. I want to offer my sincere thanks to those colleagues who are making a presentation, and also to Chris Longley and Kuban Rodrigo for their ongoing excellent work in supporting colleagues currently on the ICAP programme, and of course to all of those who supported the organisation of today's event. I hope that you all find it interesting and enjoyable, and that it's the first of many shared practice events to come. But for me, for now, it's goodbye, and over to Chris.
Did Simon have a beard when he last saw him? I'm not sure if he did, yeah. Okay, so I'd like to also echo Simon's sentiments about being a privilege and a pleasure working with colleagues here, despite some interesting discussions about punctuality and what else, deadlines, things like that. Yeah. But no, it's been great working with you. I've really enjoyed it, as Simon has as well. And I'd also like to add my thanks to everyone who's helped organise this event today. So, as Simon said, there's a twofold purpose today. We have the graduation at 12 o'clock. Before that, we have the sharing practice events, where we have 4 speakers who are going to be helping us understand a bit more about learning and teaching by providing insights from that final module project they did for the ICAP programme. Okay, so the format of this is that there will be, each person will give a 15-minute presentation of their ideas and project, and then we'll have open that up to about 10 minutes of question and answer, and then after that we'll move on to the next presentation. Okay? So, if I could ask the first presenter to come up. So, we'll be talking about assessing the use of technology-enhanced tools in teaching and learning of quantitative modules in the Lancaster Ghana Partnership in the case of their accounting programme. Okay?
All right, thank you very much. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of my own learnings that I picked up from engaging with this ICAP module. So basically, you see the topic as long as it is. All it's talking about is the fact that coming into this environment where teaching is really enhanced with lots of technology. My friends will reckon with me that we all had to battle with getting used to using a lot of electronic platforms in this system. So when I was tasked with writing a paper on any topic of my interest, what came to mind first of all was one question that usually my students will always ask me. So I teach mostly quantitative courses, so accounts, accounting, finance. So what I realized is that I would post slides or materials on Moodle. That's the electronic virtual learning platform that we use over here. And yet I would get calls from my students, or I meet up with students and they ask me, oh, what is the formula for this? Or where's our current slide? Meanwhile, the materials are already up on Moodle. So sometimes I have to refer them, oh, you have these on Moodle and you can check it out. But some will still come to me and say, oh, Madam Git, it's always different when we solve the question with you in class. We understand it better, we appreciate it better. So I had to ask myself, is it that it's a matter of students not being too comfortable with using the e-platforms for learning? So I decided to focus my research on that. All right, so basically the background reasoning for my research was one, students of today have access to lots of facilities, especially, easy to go gadgets that allows them to have access to electronic materials at a go. They have smartphones, they have all these devices. So what really is the barrier? Why are we not getting the most effective outcome from using our e-learning platforms? So I decided to, also think about this. One of the learning outcomes that every university lecturer always focuses on is the ability to have students develop the independent learning skills. Because we don't want our students to go to their institutions of working and then their bosses ask them, well, get me this information, and they will now have to ask, how do I get it? So we equip them with knowledge about how to independently search for information, search for knowledge, know how to go about issues, so that we always don't have to be there to tell them what to do. Now, so with this intuition that we want people to have this skill of independent learning, e-learning, of course, should be a way forward. So why are we encountering these kinds of problems? Now, another question that came to mind was, is it a matter of the type of course, that is the discipline, being quantitative or qualitative, does it really matter? And also, do cultures affect this kind of interaction, or how people use this kinds of platform? Another issue that I thought about is, usually online degrees in accounting and finance are not well embraced in Ghana by most employers, like the way they would embrace other forms of online degrees. They'll ask you, if they ask you, what kind of degree do you have, accounting and finance? What form of education, online? They tend to question it. Unlike if it were a qualitative course. And most institutions wouldn't really appreciate or embrace these kinds of degrees. So what really is the problem? Considering the fact that the professional programs, accounting, ACCA, ICA, are mostly run this way, but they get the effective results mostly, although it's usually blended with classroom learning. So my main idea is wanting to find out one. So this led me to exploring these research questions. The effectiveness of e-resources available for supporting teaching and learning of the accounting programs, and the challenges in administering technology-enhanced educational practices in the international context that we find ourselves in. So the first focus, or the first question, effective use of technology in administering accounting education. So I got myself looking out to literature in accounting on how teaching and learning of accounting using e-platforms, or in most cases a blended form of e-learning and then face-to-face learning goes. Now I found out from a study done in Hong Kong using a software that they call SOL 2.0. So this research was conducted on a diploma in accounting program in that university. Now they have set up this platform that provided course materials, or the coursewares. So you had videos and audios of lectures. You had all the materials linked to supplementary materials. You also had a Q&A session for interactive question and answers for students to do independent learning on their own. Now, what was the impact of this? They realized that this provided a lot of flexibility and accessibility to students. It enriched understanding and then the students' learning experiences. So they had a very positive impact. But then the main limitation of this was that it wasn't compatible with most of the tools that students would usually use. That's the screens, gadgets with small display screens. So usually you need your main laptop to be able to access this kind of platform. Now, if you were into quantitative, you'd understand how it works. So for you to even answer one question, sometimes it can take you an hour or more, sometimes 2 hours. So you realize that you have to generate these long tables and stuff, which of course you'll agree with me, won't be so easy to navigate on a small display screen. Now, another finding from Thomas et al. Tells us that they experience better performance of internet-based students versus classroom-based students. So face-to-face versus using internet, they experienced the fact that they had better results on their 4 examinations that were taken with students who use these 2 forms of learning. They got better results with those who had some form of electronic versions of their learning tools. Now, another study with MBA accounting students revealed a trade-off between the 2 delivery systems. So they admitted the fact that there are certain aspects of face-to-face delivery that can never be substituted by technology, or online studies. So for the fact that there is some form of interaction that takes place in the classroom that cannot be substituted by online learning. They also agree that online learning has its own advantages as well, with some other advantages that cannot also be substituted by the face-to-face as well. But they also agreed that the gaps can be filled or can be narrowed as the online system is better enhanced. That is, as you make the online system much more friendlier, like what I talked about. So if you are able to have a system whereby we can have everything displayed on a small interface and you can have access to everything that you want, then it narrows the gap between the 2. Now, a last study identifies that students do not conceptualize online education as a substitute to classroom learning. So it's a conception that students also have that if I sit at home and obtain education, it's not the same. The experience is just not the same. Despite all you say about the comfort that it offers me, students still have to be brought out of that panel to experience, their own ability to organize their own studies. And that is usually kind of a hurdle for students. So before I go on to my findings with the case of LU Ghana, I'd just like us to look at a model that describes how we can judge the effectiveness of a system or an online system. So for my colleagues who are now doing ICAP, I would say that I always refer to a framework. Start your work with a framework when you are dealing with Lancaster University, or else you don't look at the work with a different eye. So this is a framework that I use in analyzing the effectiveness. So it's developed by Gupta in 2006, and it looks at how you can obtain an effective result using an e-learning system or an electronic learning platform. So usually, according to the system, you have your technology given, so a kind of technology, whatever it is, with the computers and everything that you need. And you have the learning technique, so whether it's an individual form of learning, a collaborative one, an instructor-led, a self-paced one, it depends on what kinds of electronic systems that you have. Now, this influences the learning and interaction process that is being used. Now, we admit the fact that there are two main issues that affect the effectiveness of this learning and interaction process within an e-learning or an online system. The individual differences, your traits, your states, so your history, your profile, your background as a person, as a student, as instructors, all inform the kind of experiences that you are bringing on board to either embrace and accept and use this kind of technology. Now, it's also influenced by the support systems as well as the content of the program. So if the content is not really enhanced and students don't get what they want, it's not that friendly, then of course you just have a system sitting down and everyone coming to you to ask questions that you suppose they should know. Now, this influences the kind of outcomes that we want to have previously. So, looking at this model, I now ask myself, what is the experience I have over here? So, it was a short study, so we weren't allowed to actually interview students. But based on our experiences, I mean, we could just infer. So what I experienced is that one, of course, the effectiveness over here depends on the online activities that we have. So basically, there are online activity support services there, but in terms of accounting, for instance, there are nothing like workbooks or any tutorial sessions or stuff like that. I'll come back to that and you appreciate what I mean by that. So it's influenced also by the content that is there, the age. So mostly students that are much more older usually don't appreciate going to check emails and stuff like that. They'll always come to you and call you to ask the same questions that you posted on Twitter. Now, previous experiences with the use of such systems and support services also influence the use and adoption over here. So basically, we have a lot of support systems over here, but then some students still wouldn't use it anyway. Also, students prefer classroom interaction because they are able to follow systematically and ask questions in real time. So my students prefer that we solve questions together in class because in accounting there's a whole big table with figures scattered all over. But we place those figures there by systematically doing certain things. And they want to understand how you calculated to get a particular figure and fix it in there. And they want to see you do it and follow you as you do it. But if we could have form of tutorial sessions a system that allows that, it will be fine. They also don't have a Mahara page. Okay, I know Mahara because I used it, but here, the platform that they gave us, maybe Chris will tell them, they don't have that. So if we could have that, discussion forums are there as well, but most of students use them, but they don't, respond to you on that platform. All right, so basically that is the effectiveness. Now the last point or the last analysis was on the challenges that basically we face. So this framework, I wouldn't go through it. But basically just the topic is just telling you that we have extrinsic barriers and intrinsic barriers. that are faced by control mechanisms. So basically the student profile, so it's very related to the first one, their background, and also the elements of the program influence the kind of challenges or post challenges that students are likely to encounter. So what we found is that students really appreciated, so the challenges, students would still prefer to have face-to-face sessions anyway, and then the skill for independent learning, because students now will have to organize their own learning, was a challenge for students. We also find a study that talks about 3 main challenges, which were very similar to what I found. So basically, they talked about culture, the influence of culture in the blended learning environment. So we had issues like that in Saudi Arabia, where most female lecturers just don't like the internet because it's a source of unethical material. Though it's the same platform that gives us ethical material, just because it also gives unethical material, it's a no-go area. So it's a lot of cultural influences as well, and instructors' resistance to use the system and stuff like that. So the design as well, and then the demand on the lecturer's time. So if you are saying we should use online very often, students will pose questions at various moments in time, and are we to sit down and be responding to them at any point in time? So that was the question. Now in LUG, we realized that, I mean, whether we liked it or not, in this case, we were forced to use an electronic system. So the adoption by lecturers is good, but we still don't use a lot of the facilities, such as online tests, discussion forums. Some also prefer not to use slides at all. Now with the students, they are abreast with technology, they are always on smartphones, but unfortunately, they like to check out entertainment stuff more than academic stuff. So that is the problem that we have. When they have a question, they are not likely to go to YouTube and watch a video on how an economic model works, but they will go in if they want to check what Shaka movement is doing. So that's the problem that we have. And so mainly I conclude by saying that to make it more effective, what can we do? In my practice, we can have workbooks online for practice, personal tutorial or study sessions for quantitative subjects, and simulation opportunities that will enhance their learning resources. We can also develop a platform that allows editing and calculation, which will be well embraced, considering how complex it is to type formulas in quantitative courses. So if these formulas are already inputted, you just need a click to get it, fixed. Just if you want to ask your lecturer a question, you just need to select them instead of, or probably the last says, the use of stylus to perform calculations without typing, because it's math, and if you want to calculate it, if you want to type it in order to ask your lecturer a question, it's very tedious to use equation editor. So why not have a stylus system? I just take a pen and write it electronically and just transfer it to the teacher. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gifty. That was very interesting. I'm sure that is something that's of great interest to all teaching staff here, because it's not just about quantitative courses in accounting, but the use of technology in general is something that is a real challenge. So we're going to open it up for any comments or questions from the audience.
You mentioned Mahara, but you talked about its significance to aiding in online forum discussions, etc. I missed your point about how useful it was in your own experience, and if we are missing it here, does it disadvantage our students in any particular way?
Actually,
can you explain what Mahara is?
Okay, so Mahara is like a page, like a formal page on Moodle where students can actually interact with themselves. They have they can upload videos, files, exchange a lot of stuff. So basically it allows them to interact without the lecturer's presence. But the difference with the discussion forum is that the lecturer is present on that forum. And you realize that that one, they don't want to use it. Probably they don't want to see them make mistakes, or I can't really tell. Some of them just don't know how to go about it. So they just don't, I send messages on it, but I don't get any replies on it. So I think they see it as just an announcement forum. So I would say that some students in other cohorts are now adopting the use of WhatsApp to do that. But I don't know, but when I as a student there, they had a lot of issues about using other forms of communication for security reasons. So they wouldn't respond to you if you use emails other than Lancaster mails and stuff like that. So I feel, okay, this is the platform that they provide for you to use. But I don't know why they don't have it.
But our students don't have it.
No.
They have it, they don't use it.
They don't. So they use, some use WhatsApp now.
I know I passed out of university a few years ago, but is there anything which we as an organization or university need to do to encourage students to use these technologies which are available? Or is it sometimes a preconception notice that we'll just assume that they're only on their phones to be on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, but is there anything which we need to do internally to enhance the use, some competitions, surveys, but how do you make it more interesting? I know there's one recent graduate here.
Yeah.
Even for yourself as ICAP students, could you have used technology? I mean, you used a lot of technology because you were dealing with Simon and Chris. You know, you were doing your webinars and chats online, but you know, maybe put this question to Alfred, like maybe you're a law student, but you know, how can you actually get students to use technology more?
So I think it starts with the lecturers getting acquainted with the system. So if the lecturers are used to the system and they know the system very well. So if I institute a forum, and for instance, I force them now, and I tease them, I mean, I tease them about, I mean, not consulting, I mean, for instance, so I have some of my teachers telling them, okay, you come to me, you don't understand this and that, and I ask you, so do you ever consider watching a video on YouTube? So during my interaction in class, I give these ideas to students. I even tell them, though illegal, no one should record me, but I tell them personally. So ICAP teaches us how we link our personal learning experiences and with how to help others. Personally, I used to record my lectures when I went to class and I wasn't in the mood for learning that day. I would record you. When I went to class and I just feel tired and whatever you're saying is not going in. And in University of Ghana, mostly, if you just had to repeat or probably not mince words about what they actually said in class, they appreciate you. So I wasn't found at the library all the time, but I was getting the best of grades. But the secret was that I would usually record them because they want to hear what they told me. And I would learn based on that. Whilst people are researching here, going to one library, collecting books and acting as if they are learning, I wouldn't put
The Mendeley, yeah, thank you very much. It was very interesting. The Mendeley referencing tool, what did you find? Do students make use of it? Do you make use of it? Or are they reluctant? Because it's very easy to use.
Yeah, in terms of research, yeah, mainly I use it. Actually, Menga just walked me through and I've been using it. My students would lazily, those who write essays, will write an essay and then we use Word to generate the list of references. In my case, I know how I learned it manually. So I know it manually and I mark it manually. So that system usually doesn't always get updated on their systems. So it may have old versions and do the reference list that way, which I won't accept. So sometimes plagiarism checker will say they've passed, but I mark and they haven't passed my plagiarism. That is what I do.
Is there one more question for Gifty or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just wondering if you look at how students embrace these technologies in their studies. One thing I realized is that sometimes how the lecturers themselves also embrace and use this also affects the students. But there are some courses where students are forced to really make use of these technologies, and there are some students don't bother to really go to the platform at all. So I don't know if that also really counts when it comes to students embracing these technologies for their studies?
All right. So with me, when we started, we were learning, but I think my first year to say, I mean, they have been more challenging with us because we are not used to the system. So they have accepted the fact that without going there or getting information from there, they are likely to miss a thing or two. So they have accepted it very well because when they came, we were used to the system and we were using it very effectively compared to the previous students. They as well, I think, being forced to use it kind of works in my case, actually. Because if you don't use it, then you don't get the results you want. So if the lecturers could enforce it, use it. So I did an interim marking for my third years who are writing dissertation. And I told them that, okay, I read the feedback, they decided not to advance. So I told them, okay, I'm giving you a general feedback on Moodle, and as to whether you go there to read is your own problem. So, so I gave them a general feedback, everybody, and then I asked them to respond to the feedback if they have questions, because they might have the same questions that their colleagues will have. So they respond, and I also respond, then everyone sees it. So I'm forcing them to use it. So if without that, I've gotten to the extent that if you meet me and you ask me a question that I've asked you to do on Moodle, I wouldn't answer you. So if that is done by everybody, I think they'll be forced to use it.
Well, okay, thanks very much, Gift. I think, yeah. As I said, this is an area that I think requires further discussion, and I think, Raghav's point, what can the university here in Uganda do to facilitate this? It's very important, and I think it's something you can take forward in terms of discussing amongst yourselves, but also involving students. Because if you think about students, they are brilliant at searching things on the internet. They're brilliant at social interaction and social media. They've got all those skills. Why aren't they transferring it to their learning environment? And that, I think, is the question that really needs to be answered here. Because, they can do it, I'm sure. Yeah? But it's getting them that mindset into thinking, in a learning environment, I can use those skills as well. So thank you very much, Gifty. Okay. And if I could now ask for Lawrence. Now, pronunciation. Watch it. Okay. So, Lawrence is going to talk about indigenous knowledge, an essential part of inclusivity and diversity in educational and sustainable development in Ghana. Lawrence.
Well, good morning. Yeah. So, in my case, I'm looking at indigenous knowledge as part of. We were learning something about inclusivity and diversity while we were doing the ICAP. So it came to my mind to look at the indigenous knowledge as a tool that can actually promote sustainable development in Ghana. And as we see, the basic, I looked at the theme, under the word I chose, the theme was cultural relevance and sustainability. So under that, I talked about what is sustainable development. I discussed it's very multidimensional. It talks about structural changes as well, and also improvement in the quality of life of people, including education. So my area was to look at it from an educational background, and I focused on IK or indigenous knowledge as another source into our educational practices in Ghana to affect better understanding of culture and development as well, and to find ways to associate this with my models as well. So you see that the objective that I used was to generate student interest in involvement in knowledge acquisition and this practical application to social change, to affect the open forum in the classroom, students to share peculiarities and uniqueness of different sources of knowledge and culture of their own society, and also to find ways and means to help them appreciate diversity and also inclusivity. And the idea that development can also start from local constructions as well in the society. So that was my objective. I looked at a lot of literature review, but it's just a few that has something to say in relation to indigenous knowledge, development, and education as well. So in the Kun Weji, they talk about language, Arturo Escobar, how to encounter development from the grassroots level as well. Then Briggs also discussed the usage of IK in development and their problems and challenges as well. Then I looked at Boville, Waters, and Steiner. And they also looked at a transnational approach to teaching and how learning in the higher education can be done as well. Odora also talks about it, knowledge and its integration, then other people as well. Then there is also a transnational educational review handbook. And in this book, I realized that talks about the generic consideration of inclusive curriculum design, which is very, very important as well. Then Warren discusses extensively on the relevance of indigenous knowledge for development and how to design a framework for action. So I saw there's a big and interesting link between local knowledge, worldview of the people, and how we can actually promote development through the teachers and through the classroom, as a matter of fact. So this is an ongoing research that I'm doing, trying to implement it in my area of teaching as well. And I realized that in looking at the literature review, some of the emerging questions that came up relates to, comes from interesting areas of studies are how university relates with IK, system as authentic. How can we transform it into our universities? Most universities, they think that IK or indigenous knowledge is not very much relevant, not important. So the question that I came up, which becomes a loophole, is how are we going to embrace this sort of knowledge to promote development? And some philosophers like Moore, they're saying that African philosophy lacks logic and epistemology. There's no sense in knowledge. There's no sense. It's not well documented. Therefore, it cannot be argued from that perspective. But it's not true. And how can we develop new methodologies for universities to use it to teach our students as well? And how to deconstruct the minds of our youth from Western educational practices to begin to appreciate sources and resources of knowledge that are much more closer and common to their own life experiences as well. And we are here, and the children are here. So if we are teaching them, how do we use examples that we pick from Europe or from America? So for them to understand the content of our knowledge, why don't we begin to look at our own societies and communities and find ways and means to enhance the understanding of knowledge systems as well? So those are some of the problems that I came up with. And also they will talk about how to document and how to systematize this sort of knowledge, and also the problem of intellectual property issues, which we don't really have very well in relation to indigenous knowledge systems. So these are some of the things that I came up with. But it didn't really discourage me at all. I went on to research into it and to find ways and means to see that there is a link between curriculum design, indigenous knowledge, and also the relevance of internationalization of higher learning. And I realized that most of my course in PPR department is very, very Western-centric in its own way. It doesn't give much room for contextualization in our society. And we've been trying to find ways and means to, have a leverage, and it's been ongoing. And we've been giving away a means to having the chance to be trusted, to redesign sometimes the content of our courses, to really relate, have examples from our own communities as well. So, but also, since higher education is becoming highly internationalized, wherever you go, we talk about it, then we have a duty to respect the fact that if it is becoming very much appreciated, then we should look at also the relevance of cross-cultural approach to teaching and learning. Whether we like it or not, this is what it's supposed to be. So if it's becoming very internationalized, then we can't continue to allow that kind of hegemonic influence to continue to influence the way we teach and learn in our own communities in Africa. So that is the whole idea here. And thanks to our ICAP studies, we're able to know that good learning outcomes need to accommodate and enhance heterogeneous academic practices. Also talks about the need to also localize our module content and learning outcomes, and also relate to the constructive alignments as well. So you can see that even the ICAP program that we went through, gives us these sort of indications and the relevance to pay attention to the local content as well. So that is why I took it from that perspective. And I came to notice that it actually encourages learning within a context, you know. So how can we make our models be effective in diverse environments? Now we are going to China, we are in other parts of the world. So if education is going to go through that kind of internationalized mode, then we need to readjust the way we do our teaching as well. And that is how I look at my research work from this perspective. And over here, before you can even talk about the fact that indigenous knowledge is important, you have to justify your point. So I need to continue to convince and find ways and means to use my knowledge and my research to create that kind of conversation to show that it is important and we can't just let it go. And I realized that some of our knowledge include oral poetry, riddles, chants, sayings, prose, literature, proverbs, adage, folklore, drama, songs, myth and legend, a lot of them. And these things have content. It's a whole content of wisdom and knowledge, you know. And last week I was driving in Legon campus. I saw a trotro, and at the back it says school fees. That is on the trotro. And I was thinking about why school fees. All right. Then I began to think that maybe that is why he was driving the trotro. That's why he works very, very hard. Because of school fees, some people are in trouble, you know. And it really generated a whole discussion. Who can really become a PhD thesis for somebody? So you can see that most of our knowledge systems are full of powerful messages, and we need to begin to recapture these sources and inculcate them in our teaching practices to help our students to understand knowledge within our own context as well. And also, you can see that these sources project very important things on moral values, religious beliefs, on human nature, human relationships, and many other more as well, other aspects as well. So to communicate tradition is part of the process of establishing a collective representation of what is deemed good and inspiring for social change and also for development. So that is how I look at it. So I had to find a way, how do I approach it? And this is still ongoing. And I realized that in the humanities, some of the courses are can be used. So I looked at one of my courses called Ethics, Philosophy, and Religion. And it's an introductory course that looks at key areas of ethics, philosophy, and religious studies as well. And it actually talks on themes of Western philosophy and religion, as well as other authorities upon which these ideas are grounded in itself. So I decided to reevaluate my educational aims, the learning outcomes, teaching and learning methods, coursework, and everything included, and how to find ways and means to test the subject specifics, and how to blend with various themes and ideas of local and indigenous knowledge. It's not easy, but it's really important to begin to look at it from this angle as well. And in trying to do that, I decided to make sure that despite contextualization, I do not water down nor take away the quality preservation, of course, objectives and aims that we share with Lancaster, UK as well. So that is how it had to go. And I also introducing some African literature in a reading list, for example. And there's I checked on the internet, there's a whole bunch of books from the African perspective, African philosophers, African moral theologians who have written a lot. So we can actually change and make some adjustments in the kind of books and reading list I give to my students. And that is one thing I'm trying to do now. And also, not only that, also encourage them to read with care and attention, necessary for genuine philosophical and cultural comprehension of the text as well. Then also find ways and means to facilitate in class, you know, and also outside contact time of class to encourage them to do their own personal research and reading on their own terms as well. And also sometimes invite students in class during discussion to compare and contrast readings from different cultural contexts to encourage them about other cultures as well. Right now we have here in Lancaster students from Angola, from Cameroon, you know, and from other parts of the world. And these people, we all are here, it's becoming very internationalized in itself. So we need to begin to listen and learn from each other from this perspective as well. So that is how I did. And also to encourage them also in my seminars that the students learn to broaden the discussion that they make on key terms of sustainability, development, and development as well. And also can bring in visiting speakers, those who are experts in traditional and local knowledge systems areas. And sometimes find time to go on some excursions, some cultural sites as well. So these are the things that show movies and documentary some culture and custom in our own country. So these are some of the approaches I'm trying to inculcate in my area of study to begin to reignite the interest in something of our own. Because I think for development to actually take effect, it is very important for us to begin from the grassroots, from our own, and begin to build from that perspective on. So to conclude, the whole thing is going to engage and promote the professional value of heterogeneity of academic practices, which is very important. And if we are here saying that we are internationalized, then we need to be internationalized indeed. Find ways and means to open up our minds in such a way that we can embrace different thought patterns and different processes of life to really enhance our knowledge systems also. And also special emphasis on how people learn in their own context. Very important to observe how our children should learn within their own context and how they absorb, and through learning and absorption of all these ideas, how it can help them begin to become aware of the need for development and for social change as well. And also, the way to make development projects in Africa sustainable is to build a foundation by inciting full support initiatives from our local institutions as well. So we need to help as an institution, as a university. It's our responsibility to push development in this country, in this Africa, by beginning to incite our younger ones to begin to think on a broader perspective from this angle also. So this is how I looked at my research. And just to, as you know, a little bit of reflective commentary on my work was that I'm so grateful for the ICAP program. It has actually given me an interesting perception in teaching and learning has improved immensely. It has also given me a lot of knowledge about student-teacher relationship, how to do feedback, and course content delivery by collaboration with UK students, because I was a little bit late, so I had to join them on Skype sometimes too, and we shared our ideas and our concepts together. So it really, the ICAP program has actually opened up my mind to a very large extent and given me some more tools in my teaching career, and I think it's something that is worth noting as well. So I'm still working on it. The knowledge systems and its relevance to education development in Africa is still ongoing. Hopefully it will begin to become popularized so that we begin to understand these things as well, that development is linked with education and also is linked with our own local knowledge systems as well. The awareness has to begin to be created for our own younger generation as well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Lawrence. Presentation that raises some fundamental questions, we could say, especially about the relationship in a partnership between Lancaster University, Ghana. In terms of the quality assurance, as you mentioned, how much flexibility is there to interpret not only content and deliver content in a different way, but also interpret knowledge? What is knowledge? How much flexibility is there in Lancaster to accept that kind of thing? If Lancaster is putting itself forward as an international university, global university, then it needs to accept this kind of flexibility. So lots of questions I'm sure in your minds about. Can I open it up to the audience for questions? So can I put it now first? Yeah.
I think Chris has already started yes, the question I wanted to ask. So there are contemporary debates on decolonization of African curriculums, and then you talk about deconstructing minds. So I was going to ask if you examine the realities of such indigenous knowledge introduction into the curriculums in a situation like this. Now, when you talk about indigenous knowledge, you look at medicine, you look at traditional knowledge, customs, folklore, and then you have students from different backgrounds coming. Do you think about the realities?
Yes.
Secondly, again, when you talk about this proposal for developing education, are you being subject specific? Because I find that you talked about intellectual property. You have to think about law, where if you need to introduce customs must pass repugnancy tests.
Yeah.
Now, are you proposing that this should be relevant to particular disciplines, or you're just looking at education generally?
Yeah, I think in education in general, you mentioned about traditional medicine, for example, which is really amazing. And these days we have those who are combination of local medicine and spirituality. We have them. They are itinerants who walk around in town selling medicine, and they say that the one medication can cure about 100 different kinds of diseases in Ghana today. Then we have those who are combining herbal and scientific research as well. And these are all there. So you can see that there is something to begin to address. And that is where I think this new approach is very, very important. And you are right. Patent rights is a problem. I was interviewing one man, a herbalist, and he said that for him, he can never document his work because it's supernatural stroke herbal medicine. And in that case, it will mean that no, if I put it on paper, the power will go. It's supernatural. And that is around some of the problems that we have. And those are the problems Western world is using to actually water down the relevance of our own local knowledge systems as well. So we need to combat that in a very large scale. And I think the best way is to start with our young people. Because there's too much of westernization ideas, and then when you come home, you also have very important and very interesting things to learn. So I am thinking that if we start from in their youthful age, it will catch up and we begin to create the awareness. Then gradually maybe law and policymakers will begin to pay attention to this area as well. So not only my PPR or philosophy area, but I think also other areas can have their own way. I don't know in accounting how you can make it. But I'll leave that to Gifty to answer that question. But I think there is a way out for all of us in a way. Yeah,
okay, so Kenneth.
Yes. What was it's a follow-up question. What was your experience in trying to modify the content of your EPR 100? Were colleagues in the UK receptive to Africanized?
That was a big one, I don't want to recall it because when we went to the Lancaster University for the first time about 3 years ago, and myself and my other colleague, and we had to meet the whole faculty member. It was really an exchange, and I remember they gave us 12 hours to go and redesign particular course to prove to them that we have the capacity to do that. And we didn't sleep that night, I remember very well. The first visit that we had, the tension was there, and the second visit when we went again, I kept on pressing. I opened up my arms that I want my fellow colleagues to come on board with me, and up to now, nobody actually showed interest in it as well. But gradually, in our area, our people are beginning to understand, and the flexibility is coming gradually. But we have to make sure we don't destroy the objective and the aims of these courses as well. So it's changing, but it will take time. But at least we needed to start from somewhere to discuss it as well. So that is what is happening in PPR. I didn't know about the other department, but we have started the conversation a long time ago.
Okay, Fred? Yes.
Maurice, this is an interesting topic. As you were presenting, I was thinking about it from two other dimensions: neo-colonialism and homogeneity.
Yeah.
And I can tell that what you're actually saying is like there are powers that really establish, and that's exactly what we find here in Anderson.
Yeah.
You must teach whatever curriculum that has been designed
From there. Yeah.
Did you try to look at that? For example, the experience that you're sharing, they ask you modify the content, adapt it to the African situation. And immediately you begin to do that. You start deviating from the curriculum that has been set. What was your experience? Particularly this particular story that we were talking, you just wanted to target that. What really happened?
Yeah, because it's true. How to contextualize in our locality, but at the same time, you don't have to take away the objective and the aims of the whole course, which has been designed already for us. It is not easy, but we need to be. That is where the problem is, and that is what I'm trying to, in my own experience, trying to find ways and means to not to lose the value of the course itself, the curriculum, but how can I put in some interesting idea? And one way I'm trying to do that is using like my reading list, for example, and also using local examples in my teaching, encounter with my students, and also making sure that the seminars that they do, they go and research and come, that it has a bearing on tradition, on culture, and also on development of their own people. Because if you are here, you are in Ghana, and you are studying, and you are thinking about somebody's country, and I think that is a shame. I think education doesn't have to be like that. And I think another internationalization of educational system today, if you look at their documents, it actually encourages heterogeneity as a matter of fact. So we can't actually deviate from this. We need to take the initiative and begin to work around it and see how it could help us in our own way. Whatever they have, we also have. Thinkers, inventors, we have them here as well. We need to begin to resurface these contents and be proud of them and use them as lectures as a matter of fact. So that's how I look at it.
Oh gosh, there's lots of questions over here. Over here, come on, from this side, okay. So.
Thank you very much. And to colleagues who are asking questions, we must be mindful of the fact that we have also exported knowledge, and knowledge has been exported from Africa. At first, I used to think that the African writers, you just don't find the work about them, maybe they didn't write. Until I found myself in SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, during my LLM time, and there are lots, innumerable material on African writers that they have written, but you go to the University of Ghana and you don't find them there. So maybe it's not that you're not proud, but maybe it's a matter of convenience that sometimes maybe when you quote Aristotle, it's easy to find, it might be believed than promulgated.
Yeah, you're right.
But also, I like the fact that you talk about the youth, because when you encourage indigenous learning, I mean, if you're a young man and you're studying Akan at UCC, you might never get a date.
You're undateable. If you're studying Akan or Hausa, you're undateable. No, nobody likes you. That's that. Yeah.
You're doing literature and you're speaking Shakespearean, English. You're more. So there's also an idea of, there could be status and role as well. Subject you study, and even here in Ghana, the way you speak English, the more eloquent you are, sort of gives you the status rather than speaking your local environment.
It's true, you are right, yeah. It's one tool that we are, myself and another lecturer at the University of Ghana, we are trying to develop the theory on, we call it dogmatic deconstruction. And how do we counter-react from the mindset of our people? And I think it's good to start with a young one. And you are right. When you go to BAM Library, you go to the African Studies section, there's no book there. There's only one shelf, and they put in a padlock. And when I go there, I need to even submit my ID card, even my bank statement, I don't know what I have to do, before they allow me to have a look at one little book. And I think you're right. From our university, go to the library. BAM Library, the whole shelf of Aristotle books is there. All the corpus, you find it there. So it is good that we say, and when I went online, I could find hundreds and hundreds of books written by Africans with content excellent. But where are they? And that is where the conversation
has been exported.
Exported somewhere else.
Sorry, just to add to this, the same conversation. So as actually some of the project that comes to decolonize education, and including more and more non-Western philosophers, thinkers,
yeah, it's true. Yeah, we had, Anton Amon, for example, one of the greatest philosophers, he was trained by Hegel in Austria. And when he came back to Ghana, because he still rose from the German-Dutch perspective, he never became recognized. And he died. All right. So it is about time these things begin to change in a way. We're going to appreciate our own people as well.
And the law department, because law is so territorial, we actually have the benefit of being able to design to some extent the Ghanaian law. But I found that your paper was really relevant to the course I teach, because, say, for example, ADR, the texts on ADR are all foreign. Unfortunately, we don't have many of these things from a Ghanaian perspective. But even in our class, when we discuss them, we find that some of these things will not play out the way they are described, because we have ethnic challenges, we have little differences that saying sit at the table and talk about it is not as easy when you look at our cultural rivalry and so there are a lot of important things you raised, and in a module like gender and the law, my students did not relate to the material because they couldn't see it happening from ground. So we do discuss the material there, so, and then we look at how it plays out, whether it even plays out in Ghana the same way. And we found that the older the text, the more relevant they were to our context. So there was a complaint about having dated material as reading list. And I justified by saying these people who wrote in the 80s, maybe it was the reality in America in the 80s. A lot of those things are reality now here. So we are able to relate to those materials, but the more modern examples don't always resonate with my students. So we find that we actually do have to contextualize it for them to be able to appreciate the arguments and develop them in our own way.
I stumbled upon an interesting document on academic approach to conflict resolution. Amazing. I thought it was so amazing, well done. And these people were so wise how to resolve conflict and how to promote peace. And I think these things are there. We can go back and tap into these things. I know ICAP become very compliant with this in Ghana. I know the judiciary is trying to recognize it as an authentic way of I heard of the news recently, and I think it's where we can begin to use it to to confront this problem of conflict in our society as well.
I'm very aware that time is passing, so I'm sorry there were some questions over here. But rather like the last presentation, there is plenty of scope for more discussion on this, and so I think this is a real, very important issue. I mean, 2 points that I'd like to raise from this. First of all, is about curriculum design, where that is located. Now that really feels to me, Lancaster University Ghana is consolidated now sufficiently to be able to say to Lancaster, we can develop our own modules and programs here. And it's necessary for us to contextualize, okay? Because, now the second point is we need to convince Lancaster colleagues. And it's not just about adapting case studies or examples or a little bit of content. It's maybe challenging about what is knowledge. Okay, and what counts as knowledge? And that's going to be a very difficult discussion because, as I said before, the internationalization of higher education is often actually privileging of Western concepts of knowledge, which you could see as a form of intellectual neo-colonialism around the world. So these things need to be challenged. And there's, as I say, difficult conversations to have with Lancaster possibly, but I would suggest that this is a very, very fruitful area for you to discuss here. Okay? So again, thanks very much, Lawrence. Okay. So, if I could ask Yao Musia to come and give a third presentation about 21st century skills, employability, and computer science education. Okay, thanks.
Good morning, guests and colleagues. I forgot something here. I forgot world peace, food security. Okay, so I'm referring to the fact that actually I took on probably too much for the few weeks we were given, and it caused some difficulties, some late submissions and so on. Yes, it's true. The same thing we fear with our own students, I was doing it. And it was my own fault for trying to do too much. Again, today, please, I'm going to need a volunteer to help me with this presentation. After about 12 minutes, please, somebody will make a commotion. Oh, I see. Make a commotion, come up and whisper in my ear, but don't whisper, say it loud. Kofi Annan needs your help, just so that I know when I've reached 12 minutes. And everybody will pretend that I'm on familiar terms with Kofi Annan and really got something to do. Okay, so the initial aim of this was, after looking at computer science, our reputation, how people perceive us generally, not in academia because a few people begin to understand what computer science is about, but generally in the population. And the idea that whether you graduate from university or you do a vocational course in what people call IT, computer science as we call it, you're not completely and fully trusted in the workplace. They really want to have a very good look at you. And it's a difficult situation for many computer science, I know for all graduates, but I just wanted to look at, for computer science graduates, what is the pathway from doing a course to getting a job? And what are we missing along the way? So I'm going to digress for a moment. That's why I need the help after 12 minutes. I'm going to digress and then come back. So, question to you, is this a solution to Ghana's transport problems? Yes or no? It's loosely related to transport. Well, not really. It's a bicycle, but it's not going anywhere. But somebody without the knowledge, without thinking straight, is thinking, well, if we get people pedaling, bikes are good, there's a connection, somehow we're going to solve Ghana's transport problems. Okay, put one of these in every secondary school. In a few years, Ghana will have a bike savvy or traveling population, so that traffic jams will be a thing of the past. We don't believe this, but we do believe similar things about computers in schools and knowing about digital stuff. We do, and that's why I want to show this. No, of course, you need to put some of these in every 1 minute, please. Thank you. No, the secondary schools aren't enough. Let's go earlier. Let's get them on the tricycles in the primary school. Then we'll solve Ghana's transport problem or traffic problems. Of course not. There's no connection because there are other things going on. But what I was seeing, looking at some of the literature on let's get everybody digitally skilled, let's push digital literacy, is the idea that with a computer in front of every child, suddenly Ghana is going to, or any country, is going to be able to lift up its high-tech sector and be able to invent, create software, generally use the tools in the right way. It may not be completely false. There may be some connections, but what I was seeing is that similar to having tricycles in primary schools, there's no direct, immediate connection to solving Ghana's traffic problems. Again, at the time last year we were trying to build up our proposals, I saw this in the newspaper. What's the problem, or Ghana's biggest problem, according to an Institute of Economic Affairs survey? This is what people were saying. Unemployment, the biggest. Is there one more bullet? Thank you. Yeah, so by percentages, okay, so at that time it was a little bit narrow. There was DUMSO, the electricity power cuts and so on was a bit of a problem, maybe skewing it, but definitely unemployment was the biggest problem. People talked about poverty, but unemployment is worse than poverty in that sense. So what's the solution to that unemployment problem? What did we see or what did we hear? We heard from, around the same time, the president putting forward this view. He was speaking at Methodist University College. The educational institutions would have to take a close look at their curriculum content, that's us, and the way they teach, also us, and align it with present-day realities. More and more these days across the globe, the value of a university is measured by how easily its graduates find jobs. I don't know if that's true, it was a suggestion by the president. Our educational institutions need to know at first hand what is happening in industry and train their students accordingly. This is a fundamental imperative if we are to achieve best practice and create jobs. It may be true, it may not be true, people believe it, and we can't ignore it completely. There should be a little bit of connection between what we teach, how we're preparing our students, our graduates, and something useful to do in the real world. It wasn't always like that. There were times, I'm sure, when university was just, a luxury, learn stuff so you can communicate with other people in your network about stuff which other people can't understand. I think generally those days are gone, and we should assume that parents, believe that those days are gone and want something more for their children, their boys. I want to, one last longish slide is here for a reason. Was the first paragraph of my report, and after it, the reviewer said, "Oh, this is nice, this is good," but it went downhill after that. So I thought, you know what, let's go with this one. Let's go with this one. This is the best we had. Okay, so please, it connects with the stuff about the bicycles and tricycles. Whereas few people would consider the process of qualifying for a driving license to be closely bound up with the training you go through to become an automobile designer, car manufacturer, or even to entrepreneurially and successfully run a haulage company, many of us assume that there's a tight connection between digital literacy and being a computer scientist. That's common. We think that show them a computer, teach them word processing, computer scientist. And really, no, that is the belief. And it's not even true, not close to being true. It's like picking up a tricycle, pedaling, and then saying, I've solved Ghana's transport problem. You haven't. Neither will we. Or programmer, or technician, or computer scientist. Before that also, we may even define digital literacy so loosely that being able to get onto the internet, or Google, or load up a video game, the near equivalent of being able to hire a taxi, qualifies somehow as being good with computers. People come to us, we have first-year undergraduates, they feel they're good with computers because they can play, League of Assassins or whatever. They've got the technology. And then we're showing them something completely different, and the friendship begins to disappear after the first few weeks. Hailing an Uber taxi by using a mobile phone would then make one both a computer scientist and an automotive engineer at the same time. You see, it's not true. You're just but you're a consumer. A good consumer, a wise consumer maybe, but you're not a producer. You didn't make the application, and you wouldn't know how to go about it. But for us to say we're technologically advanced, we'd have to have enough people who would have the idea, the imagination, creativity, and then the skills and tenacity to go and build something like this. And just putting computers in front of people to do Facebook, first choice, not necessarily, or Twitter, whatever it may be. And since being good with computers is necessary for the future, we're all set. But of course, the reality of being ready to be productive within and to reap the finest rewards of the digital era are not as simple as that. And that's what what the report was all about. So, we're looking also at 21st century skills. Why? Because these are, by consensus, by quite a large consensus of employers as well as academic institutions, realizing that there was some kind of mismatch between modern day universities or the graduates from such places and what is required in the workforce. What then is it that people are missing? And to cut a long story short, it's not what you might think. Well, it's critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration, not technical stuff particularly. So somehow, and this is across all subjects, somehow we're producing graduates, and this, you'd have thought this was obvious, especially the communication part, collaboration. You'd have thought this is the basics that everybody gets, irrespective of their discipline, and it's not. So computer science is no different. So what can we do in the faculty, in the department, to make sure that students are getting this? It's what the employers want. We might want to teach them something different, something algorithmic, something fancy. When they go to the workplace, they just want them to communicate, talk to us, let us know what's happening. So those are the 21st century skills, and there's a lot of research behind that particular group. Defining some of these things, quite tough to do. How do you define creativity? Another research. Communication, you have thought it was straightforward. When you arrive at the office as a new employee, talk to us. Tell us what your expectations are. And when we ask you to give you an instruction or a suggestion, be enthusiastic, be ready, understand it, don't stand frozen. And this is not happening in the workplace. Okay, well, so let's put together something else about computer science then. Recognizing that so-called digital literacy, which oftentimes has been measured as being able to go online, being able to create a document, entering a few figures in a spreadsheet, or in fact, mentioning creativity, I saw one report which defined creating, just like that, quote unquote, creating. If a person could fill in an online application, they were creating. They were using digital literacy to create something. And you know, if we do those kind of games, I don't think we'll go far, because ordinarily, if somebody writes or fills in an application form, you know, in the physical world, we don't say they're creating anything. You know, they're filling, but it's not creating. Yet somehow, in the digital, they want to have high percentage of, oh, look at our population, 86 to 98% now is creating things digitally. And it's not really useful. But there are ways of thinking about what happens when people are using computers. That is a bit different, that is a little bit creative, that is a little bit like problem solving. Most of the time, you have to reformulate the problem. You have to recognize that there's a problem, reformulate it in a way that the computer can now assist you in solving it. So if you just arrive at the computer and just click at things, you know, like in the movies, the hackers, they just arrive at the computer, they tap, 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 they're into the Pentagon. It's not, no, it doesn't happen. It's not true. It's 12.
Yeah, your man is 12 years old.
Oh, thank you. Different things are happening. And what we can see is that with computer science, it's perceived as some kind of hard, cold, soulless subject. And it's nothing of the kind. There's a machine here, or a tool, a little bit more than a machine, which can do things we never imagined. Now, if we can get, you know, a little bit inside the machine as partners, I think computers do. Computers don't all go to war. So here is, for example, suggestions about how you could introduce computer science, maybe at the school, secondary school level, maybe with our foundation year students. This is something similar to what we introduced in programming. There's a program called Scratch. This one is C-Snap, very similar. It allows you to think through a problem, piece together, like putting a puzzle together, what do we have to do to make this happen? For example, it's a challenge. Why do we want to make this happen using these instructions? We log this and log that, and step 30, 2 minus 20, shift right, all this kind of thing, thinking through the algorithm, just to come closer to things we understand. Ram's horn, somewhat algorithmic. Adding crash symbol, we get it. It's related to this. It's something that beautifies. It's from our culture. But then to think, how can we represent this in the computer? You just get comfortable with this way of representing it. It's shift here, shift there. You know, pick a color of pen, move 100 steps with the pen, and so on. So, trying to do this kind of understanding, what is this thing called computing really? It's not just point and click. That is not the digital, well, we can call it digital literacy, but it's not getting us close to being computer scientists. This is what will get us close to being computer scientists. Thinking through a problem, in this case it's a visual problem. It isn't always visual. It may be musical, it may be comparing, analogies, all kinds of things which computers can now help us with. But you first got to make that step of translating the problem into a way that you feel the computer can start handling it. Okay, this is it. Thank you. The research took us, because there were too many, well, almost too many topics involved in the research, took us here, there, and everywhere. And the first draft of the report, a complaint, or observation came back, yeah, there's not much of yourself in this, or what you're doing at Lancaster. I was embarrassed, but not for the reason you might think. Really, I was embarrassed because, you know, we do all this stuff. We do this already. We're ahead of the game at Lancaster, Ghana Computer Science Department. Make these recommendations. Oh yes, these recommendations. No, I shouldn't tell lies because I did. First draft, I told you, first draft, it wasn't there, and they requested, yeah, tell us what you're doing. I said, well, okay, you did ask. We're doing all of this. These recommendations came from a 3-year British Council report into why Ghana, okay, so they studied Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, but I looked at, especially the Ghana part, why aren't our graduates acceptable in the workforce? And what can we do to improve that? And these are the things that came up. This is the one probably we need to do, because I'm running out of time, we need to do more. Develop comprehensive data and research. We need to know where our graduates have actually gone. When they go on internships, they need to fill those reports and send them back to us, to Careers Department, who needs to send it to us. And then we know 6 of our 15 students went on internship and they all got jobs immediately they graduated. We don't have that kind. This is common. I mean, it's not something that we are doing particularly badly. We're picking up, but it's very important. We can't just leave it to chance. We need the data and show an equitable distribution of opportunities. Again, something I could have mentioned if time permitted about the thinking through what kind of thing is computer science really, and suggesting it's not a hard, cold science. Well, sometimes it looks like we're into certain categories or groups of people. I'll digress again just for a moment. When I was studying biology as a young person, it came to a moment where we had to start cutting animals up, you know, dissect them, and just in that cruel way that some of you, you're scientists, you think it's okay. Me, in my young mind, I thought, the frog has not harmed me. And there's no information that I'm going to get from torturing little animals that I can't get by some other means. So I switched from biology to, okay, they offered religious knowledge. I said, let's do that instead. But certain kinds of subject, there's things going on in them that people aren't aware of. With STEM in general, sciences in general, what do we use science for up till now? To, I'm going to use, no, I won't use that word, but to extract from the earth, to take and take and take, without any thought of environment, sustainability, and using these materials to go to war. And here's the idea. This kind of activity, it doesn't affect every group in the population similarly. If America's about to go to war in 1960s America, it's young black men who are going to go and die. Forgive me, but the white people are going to go to college and have other excuses not to go. So the war machine you built, the science you built, the technology you built, it's kind of working against a black or generally minorities population. And you know, deep, this is the theory, take it or leave it. Deep in the subconscious of somebody is the idea that this thing is not really beneficial to them. It's not for me. And I believe that certain things like that are there. And that if we start tweaking computer science, what we believe it to be, talk more about green IT, talk more about sustainability, you see different kind of people joining. You see the ladies coming. It's a true story. They care more of instinctively, I shouldn't use that word, I shouldn't say instinctively, but empirically, they care more about the environment and such issues. And if you start raising those topics, you get a different kind of, so we're tackling all of these things. Empower students, we let them talk, in computer science at least, we let them talk so much, they worry. They worry about the amount of freedom they have. They're not used to it, you know, picking their own projects, picking their own, so that's group projects, final year projects, shaping the course in, computer science seminars, picking which topics to do and take forward. So, we're taking an integrated approach. We tend to push our students out to work with local IT startups and so on. We engage them, they come here. When the students are making their presentations, we invite that audience of IT companies and so on. So many of the things that were recommended, which aren't apparently happening, especially in the public universities, are apparently happening a little bit at Ashesi and a lot with us. I think I have to close up.
I think you do. Yeah, Sophie and Andrew, you're getting annoyed. Yes. Waiting. Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah, that was really interesting, and it's what you're saying is very important. We need to go back to the program and learning outcomes, and that goes back to what I was saying before about being responsible for developing our own programs, programs here in Lancaster University, Ghana. So we can sort of interrogate those to see whether they're the right skills that those students are going through. Great. Raghav, yeah.
2 points. I think I like the way you closed up when you're talking about getting our students more engaged in the community so that they can look at solving some of the global challenges in the world. I think it's an interesting thing about government saying we need to prepare our graduates better. If you actually think about it, if you go back to our students who are going to be studying in primary, secondary schools, they're going to be actually preparing for themselves for jobs which don't even exist today. If you think about how artificial intelligence is developing. So yes, you can work with graduates, upgrade their skills so they're ready for industry. But how do you actually go backwards and get the system starting from rethinking on how things are taught, even the high school level, junior? Like they're going to be coming into the work stream in 20 years. And we're going to be like, how do you make sure that they're even prepared for jobs which don't exist? And then parents allowing them to study in those areas when they don't even know about the future jobs.
Yeah, okay. Definitely, I think there's a big problem with the way students, I'm talking about school children, are prepared for higher education. I think we all know it. They get used to the idea that it's rote learning and that we're pouring information into them and it just seeps down. And it's wrong, but you have to be quite tender with them to show them that it's wrong. So actually the foundation program is really useful for making that transition. The pressure in the foundation program is not that much, but the content is really good and it helps them to start reevaluating how they're learning. So that is really important. Actually, some of our own students have got the idea that, we can start engaging with school children. So they do small projects here and there, going out to the schools, teaching, engaging. Some larger projects they've got in mind, teaching IT in particular to disadvantaged children and so on. So that kind of recognition from 18 to 20-year-olds about the 12 to 14-year-olds, I think that's the way forward. Much else as well, but I think it's a good way forward.
Okay, there's another question here.
So I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like large components of your work was critiquing widespread notions or understandings of what digital literacy is. So my first question is, how do you define digital literacy? And then the second question is, isn't digital illiteracy so stark in sub-Saharan Africa or Ghana or West Africa that baby steps are needed? Because you don't expect a child to aspire to be a pilot if he's never seen a plane before. And so it will make sense that we introduce children to computers at tender ages in parts of Africa where children may have not even seen mobile phones. So seeing a laptop or computer will aid in, say, aspirations that they might have later on in life. So don't you think that baby steps are needed at this point to get to where we want to be?
Oh, for sure. What I'll say is also this. You see, you can start to make a distinction between the computational thinking and the computer implementation. For example, with that project, it actually was carried out in Kumasi schools with the Adikra symbols and so on. What they realized was, look, we've only got a few computers in this huge school. They won't all get on, or it just won't work. So they used the traditional stamp from the bark of the tree, got the ink, and got some cloth, and let the students start figuring out what is the rotation and spacing that you need to come out with your desired pattern. Because after all, the computational thinking, that move right once, twist 90 degrees, move right again, twist 90 degrees, if you're dropping to a lower level, go the other direction, all that computational thinking doesn't actually depend on a computer. You're thinking, you're doing the problem solving. So that's one part. Of course, the problem solving and the computer come together very nicely because you want to reproduce things at speed. But the different thing about digital literacy is exactly as you say, often it's just a matter of access. So if people have access, they can figure out how to do useful things. It is not, I was making a joke about filling in online application, but actually it's for real and serious. If you're applying for a loan or applying for a grant or applying for a job, it's real. It may not be creating. I was just trying to say that the definitions, people are getting careless. Really important, and really important that everybody gets a chance. So yes, but so long as you understand what it is you're providing access to somebody to use computers as a social good. That does not make Ghana suddenly a technological powerhouse to take on Silicon Valley. You've got to do all kinds of other things as well, or after that, and have a clear mind, and not just give somebody a tablet and say, yeah, we're sorted. It's not sorted.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not certain that this is really your research area, but I was wondering if it was possible to make computer science, the work that you do, focus partly at least on disability, because disability equipment is very, very expensive. And so I was telling there's a designer in Ghana, and I was telling him my son's wheelchair costs us £3,500. And that's because we don't have the kind of equipment that he needs here. So if you have to spend on a Ghanaian salary to tell him also a wheelchair he will outgrow in 3 years, and already we are facing that this year. We need to start looking at how we can create indigenous, using our own material, using creative ways to create this equipment that will be cheaper for us. Unfortunately, what we do have in Ghana is usually what we call aquatic. So they are using cardboard, like paper mache, seating, and it just does not have the same effect as the proper stuff that is done. So is there any way that you fit in some sort of inclusiveness and how to create that?
It's really important. You see, part of it, I didn't get to the model, the framework, but part of the employability framework includes the ethics, the sensibility to the community that you're in, the wider community. If we're not teaching our students that, they're actually not very useful, they're not very employable. So, I think with your disability conference, you notice you were having some help from Mr. Fred over there. But the help actually was coming from some students. Last year, they were first-year students. And you may wonder, how come we didn't bring in our third-year students or our second-year students, but rather the first-year students? Well, it's because of this process of changing the mindset of the students. We knew them from foundation in that particular group. They were beginning to understand. You see, before they can actually put the energy in and the effort in, they need to understand what the issues are and to care, you see. Now, that group, they care. And with that, Fred was bold to say, come on, you guys, come together, let's do this. And we'll be doing much more of that. Once they care, then they understand, then they can actually build. They can go figure out the tools to put this together. So, yes, you'll be seeing more of that from our students, and it's really important that they understand in the society, for sure.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. It's been great. We've had such different themes here. The first two presentations very much looked at what's happening in the learning and teaching environment, but of course Yao's extended that out into what happens after university. And certainly from what he's been talking about, it seems like what you're providing here is a transformative experience for students, which is excellent. So can I now ask Kenneth Garty to come up and give the final presentation, which is on exploring experiential learning as assessment towards legal educational reform in Ghana.
Thank you very much. My ICE topic was actually born out of a certain sense of annoyance with my own legal education. So much of what I wrote and engaged with in the ICAP program came as a result of things I did not like in the way I was myself trained. If I give you an example, I don't think any of you would trust a lawyer who has never actually been into a court before his graduation. So you graduate and the first time you actually go into a court to do something useful is when you have graduated. Or secondly, a medical doctor who has never seen a patient in the entire time of their learning. And that the first time they are going to see a patient is when they are qualified. This is unfortunately some of the systems we have. And it's one of the reasons why for my ICE, part of the individual curriculum inquiry for ICAP, I chose exploring experiential learning as assessment towards legal education reform in Ghana. It's long, but what I intend to say is really simple. In the last few years, there's been quite a heavy conversation about legal education reform in Ghana. There are systems around how many people should be let in law school, what kind of training should start. The 2-year training program has now been shortened into a 1-year training classroom, 6-month internship. The General Legal Council is undertaking gymnastics all around. Just last week, they have put out a notice asking for more input into legal education reform in Ghana. Interestingly, I intend to submit a summarized version of this work to the General Legal Council request tomorrow. What do I intend to do? Quickly, I won't take too long. The relevance of the study, the importance of assessment in curriculum design, exploring experiential learning as assessment, and the way forward in doing that. But what does next? What does it mean? Why am I talking about exploring experiential learning? The background comes from how lawyers have been trained in Ghana since independence. We had a system in which the university, at that point, just the University of Ghana churned out the law degree holders, and then they went on to the Ghana School of Law to do the so-called practical end of the training. So you had 3 years studying what were more substantive or theoretical subjects, and then you went on to law school for another 2 years to do the practical end of the training. Over the time, there have been calls for reforming the system because it was just not working anymore. I'm sure those managing the system themselves realized it was not working anymore, and those who were engaged in the system also realized that it wasn't working anymore. But what was the reality of the situation, and why did I choose this topic for my individual curriculum inquiry? You had a legal education system in which there was a predominant use of timed examinations. So we expect that lawyers do things that lawyers do. I won't typically write out what I am going to say in court. I may write some of it out and then advocate it on behalf of the client. But we had a system in which we used timed examinations, and the problem was that you had a situation in which what lawyers were expected to do when they were out of law school was very different from what they were expected to do when they were in school. So practically, and those who are relatively newly qualified as I am would agree that this was one of the difficulties. But as part of the work, what do I mean by experiential learning? Jennifer Moon says that all learning is through experience, that we learn things that we experience. Patrick buttresses the point that experiential learning is learning through experience, or described as learning through reflection on doing. In the context of my work, what do I mean by assessment? I borrow from Christopher Rust's seminal work. Simply, assessment is evaluating or appraising something. So you want to consider the output and to determine whether it has reached a certain standard. Yes. Now, exploring experiential learning as assessment. Why is it important to explore experiential learning? Especially for the professions in which there's the requirement of doing. It is important that students are made to experience what they would actually do. It's like if Gifty's example, we are going to turn out accounting and finance students who have never done any accounting at all. But it may seem strange. The very first time I actually moved the formal motion was after I had qualified as a lawyer. Only if the client knew that this was the case. But that's the problem with the kind of systems that we have. So the importance of experiential learning as assessment is to provide the students with the skills of learning that closely resemble what they would actually do. Because what's the point about training someone if they would not be doing what you're training them for? And we can have, if we want to use experiential learning as assessment, there have been interventions all over the world from which we can take lessons. In the United States, for example, there's been a great focus on what is known as clinical skills education. So when you go to, it might take you, in the Ghanaian case, at least 5.5 years of training to become a lawyer. When you have qualified, if you take the direct entry path, it might take you, like me, 8.5 years to become a lawyer. In the States, it will take 3, but you get very practical training. So there's the expectation that when you leave law school, you write the bar exam and you're qualified, you can go straight into court and perform action. Here, after our long years of training, we are still required to follow someone for a minimum of 6 months to sit and observe. I think it is by that, in essence, a reflection that those who train us do not themselves believe that we are ready for action. Yes, unfortunately. So in the US, there were calls from the American Bar Association for greater focus on clinical skills education. Whilst in law school, law students should be encountering courtroom practice. They should be doing things that actually lawyers do. They should be drafting motions that actually lawyers would draft in real practice. They should encounter real life examples of what lawyers would be expected to do. In a seminal study by the Carnegie Foundation looking at educating lawyers, preparation for the practice of law, it examined the connections between law schools that provided practical experiences and the graduate employability of those law schools in the American context. And it would realize that those schools that give serious practical training often have higher employability counts. And it's one of the reasons why, if I am recommending experiential learning as a form of assessment, I think that it would be good in the Ghanaian example. Let me tell you what the Ghanaian example is. So you do your LLB here with us in Lancaster. You go on to the Ghana School of Law. For practical training, one would assume that the practical training will be practical. So I had my LLB in Legon. I took 28 subjects, which were all examined by timed examinations, 3 hours each, 28 times. So I wrote 28 exams, only 28 exams. No coursework, no presentations, nothing else, just exams. And if you're an exam machine, like most of us were, you would sail through. So you can get a first-class degree that is empty. And many people would have scored high grades, but would be empty lawyers in the future, as long as they know what to predict, what to reproduce appropriately in that context. But it created a situation in which you had lawyers who were very ill prepared for eventual practice. And when I went to practical school, I was hoping for some practical action. There as well, timed examinations, once at the end of the year, in June. And we had a course called advocacy. The point of advocacy was to train us to be able to speak boldly, to advocate on behalf of our clients, address a judge. And the way in which it was assessed was also by an examination. And 130% appeal, you argue before a judge, a real judge, and you get 30% of the work. One would assume that in practical school you will have experience doing that every week, but we did it once. If you did it badly, you were finished. And that was it. And you also had a situation in which you were examined by yourself. You went in, wrote your exam, and left. You passed, you moved on, you were called to the bar, you wore a silly wig, everybody was happy, you take pictures. But the reality when I started out as a lawyer was, it suddenly hit me
that nobody in your first few years was going to give you a case and say, you're brilliant, you have a first class degree, you are called to the bar, go to the court on your own. No, you work in teams. And in law school, we were never made to work in teams, so there was no ideas of collaboration. You have lawyers who suddenly did not know how to work with others, because the whole focus was, I am going to ace the examination, and I'm through. But now, Raymond has to do this part of the research, Lawrence has to do this part of that research, and Kenneth has to go to court and present it. Why should I do the research and why should Kenneth go to court? And you had those problems because they had never experienced it, and the education system never allowed for that, never allowed for that experience. So you have a situation in which there was the idea that when you went into law firms, they kept complaining, the lawyers that you're producing are not ready for practice, they're ill prepared. And we had a great example in which the teacher who was teaching us was so bold to tell us, you know, if you live here, it will take you at least 3 years to understand the system. You know, we're discussing this in the office. I was discussing it with Alfred. And one of the students boldly said, it might well be a reflection of your own poor teaching. which we all agreed very much with. Because if the teachers felt that it would take us at least 3 years to understand and find our feet, it was a reflection of the entire system. Timed examinations, which were not linked in any particular way to what we were expected to do. So what's really the way forward is there one missing? There was one missing. So this point. So if assessment is good in improving our practice, if assessment is good in improving our practice, what do we intend to do? Often, and this was one of the things that I'm glad I did ICAP at a very early age in my academic career. It suddenly put attention on understanding that if I am teaching students for a purpose, I'm not teaching them to ace an examination. I'm teaching them to acquire certain skills that will be useful for their future practice. It is good if they ace the examination anyway. But it is meant that we often have an idea of course content, we're teaching it, I have to teach this, I have to finish the syllabus, and then it is only at the very end that we think, okay, how am I going to assess the students? But we get the idea, Ross says that there's often that idea that, you know, assessment is tacked into the whole teaching and learning experience itself. The systems that I'm going to use to assess the students, are they valuable? So it should be an intrinsic part of the learning process, and it should focus, and it should not just be tacked at the end. We have some criteria for judging whether a form of assessment is reliable, is a good one. Is it reliable? Is it valid and relevant? And is it transferable? Transferability, in our legal experience, transferability is a very, very important point. If I'm only going to let my students write exams, are they in their professional practices only going to write exams? Perhaps not. They might be presenting. They might be moving motions before a court. Are we allowing our students to do this whilst they're here with us? It's one of the interesting questions. I've already told you about my experience, my own experience with timed examinations. Thankfully, we do it differently here at Lancaster. In our Lancaster experience, in comparing, in my ICE submission, I had an appendix in which I compared other law schools here in Accra, GIMPA, University of Ghana, CAF, etc., on what kinds of assessment they use. Predominantly examinations. Here we have essays, extended essays, dissertations, we have presentations. So in one of the modules I used to teach, environmental law, the students would go find a problem that they wanted to encounter. We didn't limit them on what they wanted to do. They come back, we grade them on that one, on the writing skill. They come back, give us a presentation. Feedback is given to them by their own colleagues. So there was, in that course alone, an opportunity to empower the students and also to give them the idea that your practice as lawyers will be tested by your own peers. And sometimes the students were even much more brutal than the teachers in examining that. Multiple choice questions, timed and seen examinations, extended case study scenarios, and and all of that. So I'll provide a functional example of how different this is in Lancaster. In one of my modules, company law, we give the facts of the exam 5 working days in advance, because nobody goes to a court and is suddenly presented with a fact and told, now give us an opinion. You typically encounter the person, they tell you your story, and you go before a judge. Why should that not be the way law students are examined? So you get the facts, you go before a judge, and you present your issues. And I encourage the students to work in groups towards resolving the issues in that examination question. Interestingly, it produces better results and the students learn properly, rather than they focusing on limiting themselves on only that part. So what's the way forward? The university should introduce alternative activities. The days of punch and pass examinations should be over. It only goes to support a very small portion of the students who are able to ace time examination. It should rate the professional end of education of theoretical subjects which are examined largely by exams. It should dedicate clinical teachers. It's here in Lancaster, it's one of the things the dean has only yesterday discussed as one of the things we'll be doing, sending down a clinical teacher. And James, I would approach you on that soon about trying to get that going. Group-based experiential learning programs, we're already doing that. What would the results be? Mantel 2005 says that it would equip students with the skills that will positively influence national development and contribute to social justice. If our law students realize that their learning is not in a vacuum, that the kind of learning that they do here would mean that someone might spend 10 years in jail, their approach to learning will be different. And hopefully the national idea, their own personal ideas towards national development will change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love that expression, learning not in a vacuum. Yeah, and it speaks very much to what Yao was talking about, employability and things like that. So, although you were speaking very, very much there, Kenneth, about the legal profession, actually all those ideas could be extended across all disciplines, I'm sure, in terms of what it is we're trying to help our students achieve in terms of the real world after university. So, questions and comments, please. So, yep, in on here.
Thank you very much, Ned. I was also looking at the extended assessment activities that you have, and still very strikingly, it does not include courtroom experience.
It does not
include the courtroom experience, which is where your premise of your
but that's for the professional end of the school. We because of the structure of the General Legal Council structure, we teach the substantive subjects, they do the practical training.
But is there a way, do you think, I'm not seeing an answer right away, might you be able to think of a way of incorporating one way or the other, even if it's perhaps just one concept learning, experiential learning, at this level, at some point, that would then enhance, because you're talking about the end result of enhanced students, right? To prepare them perhaps more adequately for what they expect when they get to their master's level, right? So that's the thought. And also to really share my experience with experiential learning here with you. So I've been here for 2 years. My first year.
You make it quick, Benoni, because we're running out of time. So.
I decided to incorporate one of experiential learning in my first year for one of my courses on marketing services, right? And the idea was to take the students away into a service factory or industry and then be able to use that to discuss the theories that we learned in class. For the first year, obviously being that it was the first, I was very much engaged in it and in terms of navigating it. In the second year, so we did that. We went away outside of Cardiff. That was a brilliant experience. In the second year, I thought I would allow students to be able to engage with it themselves, to have a different freedom, And so from day one, had the conversation, first class, this is what we do, blah, blah, blah. Encouraged them, prompted them, everything. At the end of the day, it didn't happen. And I said to them from beginning, if you're not interested, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to force it on you. And I think the point I make is that I still realize that students are making, they're still prefer, to a very large extent, assessment by exams.
Maybe we're not drawing attention to the end, the value of engaging with experiential learning. Perhaps that's what we should do a bit more, and then we would know. So if you tell them that whatever time the examination would not be what would be valuable in the future, they may want to do something which is more valuable to them. Perhaps.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think one important thing that we probably need to look at is the fact that the environment that the legal system is operating now, it's different from when you completed. And this is the competition in the industry is quite high. And so a lot of law institutions are trying to put in new ways of building up the skills of their students. I'm aware of some institutions that have established moot courts, right? And there are also instances where some of the institutions take their students to observe what happens in various proceedings. So I think the competition within the environment is also having an effect, and we probably need to look at that as part of the discussion.
Thank you. Okay. Can I snap, yeah?
Thank you, Kenneth. To follow up to what Dr. was saying. Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up.
So,
I'm going to be deaf.
I'll just draw a little comparative analysis. In Nigeria, for example, when you go to the law school, we were talking about this yesterday, Kenneth. At the law school, you must go for a 3-month court attachment, chamber attachment with a law firm, and you must go for a court attachment for 3 weeks. Now, before you are accredited by the University's Commission on Law School, you must have a law clinic, you must have a moot court. Now, I understand from your presentation the difference the experiential learning makes. What I don't understand is the difference examining students, assessments, what kind of assessments, what difference. Then we talked about reliability. I've had experiences where students are asked to write a report when I did a court attachment. It's so easy for a student to just give a hypothetical. How do you vouch for the credibility of some of these experiential
If I understand your question, are you doubting the idea that experiential learning elements can be valuable to students?
It is valuable from your absolutely, but being examined, as
I am not by my presentation saying that examinations are a bad method of assessment. What I'm saying is that there should be a mix of assessment elements that closely reflect what the students will do in professional practice, so that the teaching and learning would be constructively aligned to what they ought to do in practice. So it's just a proposal for us to think more closely about what is in the middle, because we're training them to go outside there. And we're training them by the content that we have here. But in what way are we going to determine that they are well prepared to be able to do what is outside there? That's
so, for example, a student goes to the prison.
Yes.
The student comes back and is supposed to write a reflective
report. Yes. Are
you examining the student based on that writing or the writing skills?
Both on the experience and the writing skills. That's why That's why in Lancaster they are not writing a report, but they're writing a reflective report. It's an entirely different thing. And in response to that, I can say, for example, that one student saw the prison experience and was very saddened by it. One of my responses in a personal discussion with her was that it should tell you that whether you study your criminal law well or not would mean that someone might end up in jail. That in itself is something better than one who has never been to the prison.
Could I just add a point there, that any kind of assessment in any discipline, it's important you're clear about your marking criteria. What are you looking for? And it's important also obviously to share that with the students so they know what they're aiming for. And if you, in any kind of assessment, if you're clear about those criteria, about what you're saying is good or not so good work, then that should be fine. So one more question, because,
thank you very much for the presentation. Now, I spent a lot of time designing subjects around that particular criteria, and I ended up realising that experiential learning is not an easy option for the university. In fact, I used to make a requirement that the student, it was a semester-long subject, they needed a supervisor in the workplace, a supervisor at the university, there was a reflective piece, there was a meeting of all three at the end of the semester, and it had huge payoffs, but it wasn't an easy or straightforward process. And also the other thing I should just add, and I was talking to my wife recently, she tells me that you can now longer take the New York bar unless you have a guaranteed number of hours of reflective and assessed work experience over the course of your JD.
Interesting. Okay, any final questions? Oh, but very quickly, yeah.
I just want to draw your attention to this alternative dispute resolution that in presenting to the General Council, please draw their attention, because even there, the letter that we do have is very skewed towards litigation, as if litigation is the only thing that lawyers actually do. So we go through a whole year of ADR and we never master the negotiation, never.
But we do it here. You should tell them.
Yes, we do it here. And we do it here because I was trained somewhere else and we actually had the opportunity to do those things here, and I saw how useful they were. So if we don't give us a chance to see what negotiation looks like in real life, we will never understand the principles of teaching about negotiation and mediation. So it's not just litigation that is a problem for the law school, but other things that we do. Arbitration is completely untouched as well. So please draw your attention to this.
We'll discuss that during our lunch.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Ken. Well, I think that what we've seen this morning so far is that, first of all, these projects that the participants in the ICAP program do are all absolutely fascinating and really speak not just to their own discipline, but more broadly as well. But also, I feel that all four of those topics deserve more conversation. Clearly, there was lots of people wanting to ask questions, make comments there, and I certainly would encourage you to continue meeting and discussing these particular issues. I mean, technology-enhanced learning, it's a key aspect of what we do here in the universities. Cultural interpretations of knowledge, fascinating stuff, especially in the partnership context. Employability, a key issue there, and related to that, experiential learning and assessment. So these are areas in which I would really encourage you to have your further sharing practice events or discussions. And furthermore, to when you come to any kind of conclusions, then try and present these to Lancaster colleagues in Lancaster, yeah? But also try to persuade them that you are sufficiently understand the pedagogy here to be able to develop appropriate modules and programs for LUI. So thank you very much to the presenters. Can I just ask for another round of applause? And now we'd like to sort of move on just before lunch. Your stomachs are rumbling, I'm sure. Before lunch to the really important graduation ceremony. So can I ask, Cynthia, are you going to make a few words first? Oh, Tony, so I can't remember who's going to go first. But,
I think we'll both make words.
Okay, great.
Neither should version talk. Okay, I'll do the fluff at the beginning, and the really important stuff will be done by Kimberine and Cynthia. No, it's not fluff. This is a particularly important process for Lancaster University, Ghana, and we're incredibly grateful for the contribution made by Lancaster University and the effort and resources that have been put into this process. One of the things that occurred to me as I was listening to this, I have been in other universities, and I think it would be, as Chris points out, a great failure on our part if we didn't capture some of the energy that's called in the ICAP process and have a venue for it. My suggestion is that we should seriously consider twice a year at the end of each semester an afternoon or a day of teaching and learning seminar, which brings together people's experiences through the semester. What are they doing in their teaching? One of the things is that there's an awful lot of expertise in this room about teaching and learning. which is continuing to grow, not just through the training process, but by the reflective practices that is occurring on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month process. In particular, I think it's not much appreciated what a difficult and effortful process teaching is. If you are effective, you are fully engaged, and you're fully present, and you're fully committed to thinking out the process as you go on. It's a reflective, intense, reflexive process. So my suggestion is that we should seriously consider a teaching and learning seminar at least twice a year, once at the end of each semester. Not burdensome, we're not going to make people write big papers, but a way of getting together around one or two topics that are important, whether it's the online space, whether it's best practice, experience during the semester. So I think I'll have a further discussion with Cynthia. So congratulations to those who've engaged in the training, but also congratulations to graduates. It's a wonderful achievement.
Now it's my pleasure to announce the names of the graduates who will soon be graduates of ICAP. And I'll go straight into them. So the first graduate is Gifty Ajaminsa.
Okay, you want to get to test.
Dr. Imanolapa. Michael Asamoah. Dr. Lawrence Boache. Yao Buzia. Dr. Raymond Juonu. Kenneth Gatti. Frederick Dihia Menla. Dr. Inena Mfieni Ajufo. Kumarin Rodrigo. And last but not the least, Dr. Tillman Lindbergh in absentia. Yes.
Melanie wants to take my certificate, so we can have It's all right, she's shy.
buy one, get one free.
Just a comment that it's quite interesting to actually see that all our academic staff, it's just interesting to see that all our academic staff now also Lancaster University alumni.
Yes. So James, get their names and addresses.
Squeeze them for.
All right. Just some final comments before we go for lunch. First of all, obviously, congratulations to all the graduates. I know it was a long and tedious journey, doing it with your day job and so on. But in particular, and I'm not taking anything away from the full-timers who graduated today, but in particular, I think I want to thank the adjunct lecturers who engaged with the process and went through to completion. And I would encourage any adjunct lecturers who are here, and I don't think there are any at the moment, to really get onto the ICAP program and try and finish it, because I think most of you will say that it's been really beneficial to your teaching, and obviously very beneficial to our students as well. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, and thank you so much, Chris and Simon in absentia, for your perseverance from the beginning. I know cohort 1 was a little bit difficult to get going to start with, but everything fell into place later. And Kumrin, of course, thank you for coming on board. Since you're the one who's here, you are going to get the brunt of all the questions and the reading and so on and so forth. And thank you, everybody, for coming to this event, because I'm sure we have 1,001 things to do, but thank you for taking the time out to come and support your colleagues here. Thank you very much, and it's lunchtime, so let's go find some food.